Hey everyone, my name's Carly Hess, and today we're going to talk about punctuation.
About an Oxford comma, I seen those English dramas too. They're cruel.
More specifically today, we're going to be talking about comma splices, semicolons, and the Oxford comma. So we're going to start with a little bit of history about punctuation. Back in the day, they used to write these manuscripts with a huge block of text. It was just a bunch of continuous text with no punctuation whatsoever. Now, the cool thing about that is that it looked really pretty and uniform, but the bad thing about that is that people, when they were reading these manuscripts out loud, didn't necessarily know when to pause and didn't know when there was a topic shift and all those wonderful things that punctuation can help us do today. So when your grade school teacher said something like, you should put a comma in a sentence wherever there's a natural pause, they were speaking to the fact that punctuation is used as a visual aid when someone's reading out loud, or someone's reading to themselves to let them know when to take a break in the sentence. While this is a good place to start, it is not the rule about how to use commas. This had me confused for a while, and it also had me using a ton of comma splices. So when does a comma splice occur? A comma splice occurs when a comma is used to join two independent clauses. Basically, you're joining two sentences that are complete by themselves, and you're merging them into one incorrectly punctuated stream of sentence. Here's an example of a comma splice placed in a sentence where you would normally take a deep breath in. I throw a comma in a sentence whenever I want to pause. It really feels correct. So what I did there was I put a comma between two independent clauses. I throw a comma in a sentence whenever I want to pause, and it really feels correct can be two separate sentences on their own. And when we threw a comma in there, we created a run-on sentence and we created a comma splice. Okay, so you're using comma splices a lot, but how do you fix them? One way you can fix them is by adding a conjunction in the middle of the two sentences to merge them. So the previous sentence we talked about, I throw a comma in a sentence whenever I want to pause, and it feels really correct, would be a solid sentence at that point. Another way that you can correct a comma splice is by using a semicolon. Now this is the part where I start to get pretty excited because semicolons are my favorite punctuation, hands down, and they can make a couple of sentences merge into a beautiful description. They're art. Semicolons are art to me. A semicolon should be used to join two independent clauses that very closely relate to each other. So for the sentence we used before, I throw a comma in a sentence whenever I want to pause, semicolon, it feels really correct, would be a perfect use of a semicolon. The way I like to utilize semicolons is when I don't want my reader to fully stop at the end of the sentence, I want them to carry through to the next thought. It creates this kind of poetic thought stream that I really love. Semicolons are also a stylistic thing. Your teacher may not like semicolons, or your teacher may be obsessed with semicolons if your teacher is me, but they should be used in moderation. It's not going to be super effective if you have a manuscript, like we saw earlier in the video, with just a ton of semicolons to punctuate. You need a period every now and then, you need a conjunction sometimes, you need commas. Still stick with those, but if you want to get fancy, use a semicolon. Now moving on to the Oxford comma. So there is a debate going on about the Oxford comma, and it is real, and it is heated, and I am staunchly on Team Oxford comma. Now before I get into this really heated debate, I just want to let you know that not only are Oxford commas a stylistic preference, but they're also literally dictated by the citation style you're using. So for example, if you're in the business field and you're making a press release, they typically don't like Oxford commas to be a part of those, so just watch out for that. So to define an Oxford comma is used before the coordinating conjunction in a list of 3 or more items. An Oxford comma is also called a serial comma because it's utilized in a list of items or a series of words. So I have the same sentence up here, but one uses the Oxford comma and one does not, and I'm going to show you how it can leave room for confusion. So the first sentence says, I went on a road trip with my best friends, my porcupine, and my cat. Now that's using the Oxford comma because the comma is appearing before the conjunction. So in that sentence, it seems pretty obvious that you went on a road trip with your best friends, your porcupine, and your cat. Now the next sentence says the same thing, but without an Oxford comma. It says, I went on a road trip with my best friends, my porcupine, and my cat. So that last half of the sentence, my porcupine and my cat, kind of run together. And so when someone's reading that sentence, they could interpret that as you went on a road trip with your porcupine and your cat, who are your two best friends. Now there's nothing wrong with your porcupine and your cat being your best friends, but if you want people to think that you went with humans on this road trip, then you're going to want to use the Oxford comma. Another example of the importance of the Oxford comma I actually found in a BuzzFeed article that was staunchly in support of Oxford commas. Go BuzzFeed. And it showed this news alert that popped up on someone's phone. It said, "World leaders at Mandela tribute, Obama-Castro handshake, and same-sex marriage date set." Now, when you read that really quickly, there is some confusion towards the end of that sentence. So we've got world leaders at the Mandela tribute, and then we have an Obama-Castro handshake, but with the "and," it sounds like maybe that Obama-Castro handshake resulted in a same-sex marriage date being set. Obviously, that's not what occurred, but it is funny that this type of confusion can be created when you don't use the Oxford comma. Now, as you can see, this was a news alert, and journalism is a genre that typically frowns upon Oxford commas. I just think it can lead to a lot of murkiness where there doesn't need to be. I hope this video helped clear up some punctuation issues you may have had in the past, and I also hope it gives you the strength and the courage to discuss Oxford commas and to use semicolons like crazy. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, write on!